They scroll in silence, they watch, they think, but they never post. Not because they have nothing to say, but because the world has forgotten how to listen. Silence isn't emptiness, it's intent. When someone doesn't post on social media, it's easy to assume they're disengaged, shy, or indifferent. But often, that silence carries meaning far deeper than words or images could ever express. In a time where people document every meal, every thought, every fleeting emotion, choosing not to share becomes an act of quiet defiance. It's a statement that says, I don't need to prove I exist. For many, the refusal to post is not about absence, it's about intention. It's about reclaiming control over what the world gets to see and what remains sacred. Some people have realized that not every moment should be translated into content. They've learned that some experiences lose their magic the moment they are captured for validation. Their silence isn't a void, it's a boundary. It's a way of saying, this part of me isn't for everyone. The truth is, the constant performance of self on social media has turned life into a stage, and most people don't even know they're acting, but those who stay quiet, they've stepped off that stage. They've chosen peace over performance, reality over recognition. The ones who don't post often live in a different rhythm. While others chase the next story to upload, they're absorbed in moments that never make it to a screen. Their joy, their pain, their thoughts, they belong to them alone. There's something sacred in that. It's not that they don't care about connection. It's that they seek it in ways that feel more genuine, more present. They understand that connection doesn't require display. It requires depth. In a world where silence is misunderstood as weakness, they've discovered it's actually strength. It takes confidence to stay unseen in a culture built on exposure. It takes awareness to choose reflection over reaction. They don't feel the pressure to announce every emotion because they know that real life doesn't need an audience. Their worth isn't measured in likes, and their validation doesn't come from strangers. It comes from within, quietly, like a steady heartbeat that doesn't need applause to keep going. Some might interpret their absence as detachment, but it's often the opposite. It's self-preservation. Because when you share everything, you lose something too: mystery, depth, sometimes even authenticity. They've learned that privacy isn't isolation, it's power. When you no longer crave visibility, you start to see life more clearly. You notice the details, the pause between conversations, the way the sun moves through your room in the morning, the sound of your own thoughts without digital noise. Their silence allows them to feel again, to think deeply, to exist without performance, and perhaps the most beautiful part, their silence online often mirrors a deeper harmony within. They've made peace with not being seen because they've learned to see themselves. They're not trying to disappear, they're just no longer trying to prove they matter. They've realized that the truest version of themselves doesn't need to be posted, it only needs to be lived. So when someone never posts, don't assume emptiness. Sometimes silence is not the absence of expression. It's the presence of control. It's not a void, it's a choice, a quiet, powerful reminder that not everything real needs to be revealed. The hidden strength behind privacy often goes unnoticed because the world has taught us to equate visibility with value. We've been conditioned to believe that to matter, we must be seen. That if no one witnesses our happiness, it somehow becomes less real. But those who choose not to share every detail of their lives understand something different, something rare. They've discovered that the deepest power comes not from being known by many, but from being understood by few. or even just by oneself. Privacy to them isn't a wall, it's a form of protection, a quiet sanctuary where the noise of the world can't touch them. In a time where oversharing is normalized, the choice to stay private becomes revolutionary. It's not about hiding, it's about preserving what's sacred. They know that when you expose too much, you dilute the essence of your experiences. Some moments are meant to be lived, not displayed. There's a quiet dignity in holding things close, in knowing that not everything needs to be proven. Their happiness doesn't need an audience, their pain doesn't need sympathy, and their growth doesn't need applause. They find fulfillment in privacy because it allows them to live authentically, without performance, without pressure. There's a certain strength that comes from being comfortable in your own silence. It's the kind of strength that doesn't seek validation from the outside world. When someone values their privacy, it's often because they've learned, perhaps the hard way, that not everyone deserves access to their soul. They understand that energy is currency, and attention is a form of power. The more you give it away, the less you have for yourself. Protecting your inner world doesn't make you distant, it makes you self-aware. It means you know the value of your thoughts, your emotions, your boundaries. People who don't post much often carry a kind of quiet confidence. They don't need to prove what they're doing, where they are, or who they're with. They're not seeking validation because they've found peace in being misunderstood. And that's something not many can do. They're at ease with the idea that not everyone will see their light, and they're fine with that because they know it still shines even when unseen. There's also a deep emotional intelligence behind privacy. These people know that what's constantly displayed loses its depth. When you share everything, you invite not just admiration, but judgment, comparison, and intrusion. They've learned that peace is fragile, and sometimes the only way to protect it is by keeping it private. So they build invisible walls not to keep others out, but to keep themselves whole. They understand that life's most meaningful experiences are the ones you don't post about: the quiet victories, the moments of reflection, the laughter shared without cameras watching. In a world that constantly asks, "Why don't you post?" they quietly ask themselves a different question: "Why should I?" And that question changes everything. It shifts the focus from performing life to living it. Their privacy gives them the freedom to evolve without explanation, to fail without judgment, and to heal without interference. That's the kind of freedom no amount of followers can ever provide, because in the end, the people who value privacy aren't running from the world, they're simply choosing peace over attention. They've realized that real power isn't in how much you're seen, but in how deeply you know yourself when no one is watching. The ones who never post are often the ones who observe the most. While others are busy constructing images of who they want to appear to be, these individuals quietly study the world as it really is. They aren't distracted by the constant need to broadcast their lives. Instead, they notice details others overlook: the tone of a voice, the hesitation behind a smile, the truth hidden between words. They see patterns in people, in society, in themselves. They don't rush to react. They watch, they absorb, they think. Their silence isn't detachment, it's observation refined into understanding. They're the ones who stand at the edge of the crowd, not because they don't belong, but because they're watching how the crowd moves. They see the choreography of modern life, the craving for attention, the insecurity hidden behind curated perfection. And somewhere deep inside, they make a quiet decision not to play that game. They don't need to show their lives to validate that they're living them. They understand that what's real doesn't require proof. Their lack of posting doesn't mean absence. It means awareness. In a digital world where everyone wants to be seen, those who observe are the ones truly seeing. They're not blinded by filters or trends. They're guided by perception. They see how people shape themselves for approval, how identities are molded to fit the aesthetics of the moment. They see how the chase for attention has replaced the search for meaning. And while the world scrolls endlessly for connection, they find connection in silence, in the unspoken understanding that not everything meaningful is meant to be displayed. People like this often live more consciously. They process before they express. They feel deeply but share selectively. They aren't uninterested in others. They're just careful about what deserves their energy. The internet rewards immediacy, instant reactions, instant opinions. But observers know that truth takes time to form. They don't need to post their every thought because they're still thinking. They understand that wisdom doesn't shout, it listens first. This quiet way of being can feel foreign in an age of constant exposure. But for those who live it, it's freeing. They can engage with the world without being consumed by it. They can watch the storm without getting caught in it. Their lack of posting gives them something precious, perspective. They can see not just what's happening, but why it's happening. And that clarity becomes their strength. When you're not busy performing, you start noticing the performances of others. You see how much of social media is theater, how smiles can hide sadness, how captions can mask insecurity. And in that realization, observers often develop a quiet compassion. They don't judge as quickly because they understand the pressure to be seen, the loneliness behind constant sharing. Their silence becomes empathy, not arrogance. They don't need to correct or compete, they simply understand. They also know that the more you observe, the more you learn about yourself. By watching others' need for validation, they confront their own. By seeing others' desire to be seen, they question their own motives. And through that process, they become more grounded, more self-aware, more real. Their lack of posting doesn't come from disinterest. It comes from depth. They don't need to show everything because they already see enough. In the end, those who observe instead of perform are the ones who truly understand the world. They may never post, but they notice everything, and sometimes seeing clearly is far more powerful than being seen at all. Not posting on social media is often misunderstood as indifference or disinterest, but in truth, it can be a profound psychological boundary, one rooted in awareness, maturity, and self-control. In a time where people equate visibility with worth, the decision to stay silent online is not accidental, it's intentional. It's a sign of someone who no longer needs to measure their life by reactions, who has learned to separate identity from display. For many, that silence is not withdrawal. It's freedom. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't need to be seen to be whole. When someone chooses not to post, it often means they've reached a place of emotional balance that doesn't depend on external affirmation. They've outgrown the need for digital applause. They no longer crave the temporary comfort of likes or shares because they've found something far more stable, inner contentment. They've realized that peace is private and that the more you expose it, the more fragile it becomes. The constant validation loop, post, wait, refresh, compare, starts to feel empty once you've discovered genuine self-worth. So, instead of seeking reassurance from others, they turn inward, anchoring themselves in quiet confidence. This kind of detachment doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from awareness. They understand how easy it is to lose yourself online, to start shaping your life for the screen rather than for yourself. Every post can become a performance, every caption a subtle negotiation between truth and approval. They've chosen to step outside that cycle. To them, not posting is a way of protecting authenticity. It's how they ensure that what they feel, what they think, and what they do remain unfiltered by the expectations of the crowd. Those who are detached from the digital stage often live with a sense of calm that others struggle to find. They experience moments for what they are, not for what they'll look like online. They have the freedom to feel joy without photographing it, to feel sadness without explaining it, to grow without announcing it. They live their lives in real time, not in highlights, and that choice, to be present rather than perform, is one of the most underrated forms of self-awareness in the modern world. There's also a psychological depth to this silence. It's not just about stepping back from social media. It's about reclaiming agency over one's attention. They know that the human mind wasn't built for constant comparison, and that endless exposure to others' curated lives can distort reality. By not participating in the constant display, they protect their mental space. Their silence becomes a boundary, a quiet shield against the noise of collective insecurity. They don't isolate themselves, they preserve themselves. When you no longer depend on the world's validation, you begin to reconnect with something far more genuine, your own sense of meaning. You start listening to yourself again, to your instincts, your thoughts, your pace. Those who rarely post often move through life slower, more deliberately. They don't need to prove anything because they're no longer running the same race. Their happiness doesn't demand evidence. Their pain doesn't need permission. They've learned to live without the echo of approval, and that makes their peace unshakable. So when someone doesn't post, don't mistake it for apathy or distance. Sometimes it's a sign of evolution, a quiet declaration that they've outgrown the noise. Their silence is not emptiness, it's composure. It's the calm that comes from knowing who they are, even when no one's watching. So when you come across someone who never posts, don't mistake their silence for absence or apathy. Some people aren't hiding from the world, they're simply protecting their peace. They don't need to announce, display, or prove anything, because they've already found what everyone else is still searching for. The quiet power of being enough, even when no one's watching. Because sometimes the loudest presence is the one that never has to speak.